Yes, here we are again. So today I will be trying to cover, uh, it's going to be messy again, and I will cover the After Effects thing, like how we go from Photoshop, we do After Effects, and we try to track the thing. And yesterday, yesterday we went out and shot last night. Let's see, Lecture2. Oh, so that's on my drive. Let me show you the. Oh, that was yesterday. Yes. So I had Christian, my colleague, the animator, run around like a scavenger in front of the school. There he is. Can you see him? No, you can't. Oh, there he is. So this was shot again with my iPhone. I used the Filmic Pro, so it's 4K. Well, it would be 4K anyways, but it's a bit higher bit rate, sampling rate, and 24 frames a second. There he goes. And that's it. So that's the footage. And this is the final comp. Why is it lagging to get up there? I don't know. So I don't know if you noticed, but we added something that's actually not there. Very subtle. No, we blew the whole building apart and focused in on that area. Why is it takes a while to get up there? Strange. So this is the same technique. No miniatures. It's just like painting and sticking it on there. So the basic thing. How do I want to loop this. Loop. There we go. And so yeah, so we added some smoke, which is available on the server. It's like an Action Essentials pack that we have 2K footage of smoke and debris and all kinds of things that you can play around with in the comps. And then just a matte painting of the destroyed building, and we added some little dirt. And we wanted to add dirt everywhere, but we didn't have time. But obviously, you can just apply time and turn this into, a really destroyed wartime setting. So there he is. So anyways, so there's no parallax. We're not walking around with the camera. The camera is just panning, tilting a little bit, but it makes kind of a very big difference because so typically you're not just staring at the shot. It would be part of a narrative. So we're following this guy, you know. So hopefully he's the one you would be caring about, right? Not when you're just looking at one shot. So that's kind of the thing. Now you're just looking for flaws in the VFX. But that's sort of the thing. What I'm saying with your projects is that you should try to think about the narrative. It's all about the story. So what are you telling? It could be very, very simple, but it's just like storytelling. You combine all these things, the visual storytelling. You draw the boards, and you figure out how to make the audience interested in the action, like what's going on. So don't try to make. I would suggest don't make it all about the VFX. Just see, this is just the setting. And that little pan that we're following him, it makes all the difference in the world. Like if this had to be like a static shot, it would be boring. But it's slightly more interesting, at least when we're just panning a little bit. So, and this would be like exponentially more difficult to achieve if you had parallax. So if the camera, that means the camera is moving around. So you're dollying or moving the camera around. So then you would actually, because then you'd have perspective change. So you would start seeing the parallax, and you'd have to, this would. What you can get away with in shots like this when the camera is locked or just moving, panning, and tilting, is you really just stick things on here. There's no parallax. It sticks on there. So that's what I'm just gonna show you how to stick something on there. So yeah, I guess I can open up the comp and everything and show you how this was done. But I think we're just gonna take the footage and just like start a little bit from scratch, just adding an element. And I don't think we won't have time, and I don't want to bore you to death because this is just like you apply a lot of time, and there's a few sort of things you have to bear in mind, like always, like atmospheric depth, color, temperature, contrast, right? The contrast levels are really important. So all of these things, but that you can also tweak in After Effects, which I prefer. So anyways, so let me see if I can copy the footage. So hopefully this will work. Last time I had an issue here with the footage. I don't know why. Yeah, so it is. This is 2017. So the After Effects I'm usually working on is 2015, which actually they removed some features from this version, actually, which sounds really strange. But there's some, like they want you to use the Adobe, what is it, encoder for some of the export options and things. But it shouldn't be less compatible with this footage. Maybe, I don't know. We'll see. So in terms of the tracking that I'm going to be doing, so I'm not a compositor, right? This is just like simple things. It's like I'm saying, you're just like sticking something on there. So when we talk about motion tracking, typically if you're doing more advanced shots and you have parallax, you need something like we call a camera solve, which actually is also a way of tracking the motion or tracking the data. So if you have a handheld shot and I'm walking around the room, yes, we can recreate that camera movement. And we can use the software here I'm going to be showing you, but there's other softwares like Synthesize or PF Track for making camera solves. And then you get an actual 3D camera that will move just like your camera did with a lot of tweaking. Um, then you have to think about really like what's your depth of field, what's your lens. We don't have to think too much about that. So I'm just saying like this can get very complex. Compositing is a very complex subject. But still, you can do simple compositing, and just depending how you plan your shot, you can really pull off pretty successful shots with simple techniques. But you have to sort of know what the limitations are. Um, so, okay, so I'm going to grab it locally. Oh, yes, okay. So I'm just going to import a file, and then I'll go to here. There's the footage. Yeah, so it seems like it read it. I'm just going to go interpret footage, and it should show me the frame rate, which is in my case is 24. So regardless of your frame rate, you should be at least be like conscious of it. Like, what is your frame rate? So if you're shooting with your phone, you know, maybe you go in there and you just have a look. What are some settings? Is it 30 frames, 25, 24? I don't think you can set like the iPhone native 24. You can with this app. Anyways, so that seems to work. So then we have the footage, and we just drag it down to like this icon, which is to make a new composition. And it's going to make a new composition based on the footage. And what's great about that is just going to take all the settings for the footage. And so I go here, composition settings. This is the settings. So this is my pixels, my everything. So that's correct. So I'm just going to be working with this in 4K. So the better computer you have, better off. So, but this is kind of slow. So very nice is to have set this to a lower resolution. So in my case, the footage is 4K. But I'm working on this really crappy projector. So it makes no sense for me to go in here and set this to full. It's going to show all the pixels, but I'm not going to see all the pixels. Right? It's going to show 4K, but it's not going to show me 4K. So I just set it to quarter. It's just going to show me a quarter of the resolution, but it's enough because I can't see it anyways. Or you can set it to half. And the point is, it just takes much quicker to buffer. So if I press spacebar, it starts buffering the video, and you see I mentioned this last time, and I'm just going to mention it again. You see this green bar that starts appearing? That's what's currently buffered into memory. So when I hit spacebar again to stop, I can scrub in the timeline, I go back. And now if I hit play, I should be able to play that in real time. So sometimes this is not a video player. It's just like to see the footage. But it should show you real time. And if it doesn't show, sometimes it might skip some frames, and then it should, I guess it'll give you a warning here. It says not real time. But we're playing this at a quarter resolution, so it's having little problem with it. It's fine. So then we just got to find, where's, so we had an endpoint like here, and he's walking. And there's a hotkey for this, which I don't remember. Control-Shift-S. To do what? Yeah, but I want to cut it. Huh? Control-Shift-D? Just D? Not just D. Control-Shift-D? No. Oh, anyways. Oh no. What did you do? You made me enter something. Anyways, so I'm not going to use the hotkeys, obviously, since I don't know them. But you can, yeah. So I'm just going to drag this endpoint. I hold Shift, and I can snap to the cursor. And then I drag this over here. And I hold Shift, and it'll snap to there. And then he's running around, and that's the out point. I'm just going to drag that there. Okay. So that you can drag the in and out points. And if you hold Shift, it'll snap to where your cursor is. And then this little bar is where that's sort of within this range. That's where stuff is going to be rendered if I hit add to render queue, which is how we're going to get things out of here eventually, so to make our final movie. So we just click there. I'm not going to render this now, obviously, but then here you can go blah, blah, blah. You set the settings. And okay, so that looks okay. And then I go here, and this is sort of the format. So right now it's an AVI, which is a Windows thing. So if you wanted a QuickTime and format options, yes, and they have actually removed H.264. So that sucks. You can use some other codec. Well, I don't know why they did that. It's just a stupid decision. But anyway, so you could do some other codec. So a very, very popular codec is H.264. It's just like a compression you put on the video so that it would play back very smoothly online and things. It's a very, very, very popular codec. So what you used to be able to, even in the 2015 version, you had it right here. Now I guess you got to go to like encoder or some crap like that. But I guess we just use this then, and you export some codec. The point is, you just want the file to be played back smoothly. So you'll be talking a lot about formats and things later. But animation is a kind of a ridiculous format. It's like a lossless format. So it's set to AVI and animation, the file is going to be very, very huge. So it's just like image compression, right? Yeah. So that's kind of stupid. I don't know why they Does anyone know? Why did they remove H.264 from here? To make... Yeah, but if I just want to export it quickly from here, it's easier in my brain to have it here. Well, who cares? I don't want to use it. I want to have it here. Yes. See, these are, this is stupid. I don't know. I really disagree with a lot of the design decisions and things. Anyways, so you make some sort of compression on your final output. And then let's just look at that later. So, but here, fine. So I'm going to save this. I gotta go here again. So going back 2 years. It's going to be. Okay, so again, I'm just gonna, like I kind of did last time, since this is 4K footage, I'm just gonna use this frame as, so if I control click here, I can toggle between it actually showing me seconds and things, and if I control click it, it will show me the frame number. So you can see that's frame 0, there goes the frames, 24 frames in a second. And I just choose kind of a frame that looks kind of static and nice. Whichever. So here I have enough information. So I just have to analyze what am I actually seeing? How much do I need? And in the original footage, I did actually tilt up so I would see the sky, and I panned over here, and I also panned the other way, so I had more area covered if I needed it for the matte paint, but I don't need it. So anyways, so you just pick a frame, and then I can go save frame as Photoshop layers. And then this will be, and I like to just put this will be frame 76. And there it is. So these were, if you look at the Finder browser thingy, these were some of the images I found that I used. So destroyed building, just to have some like rubble and things. This was a lot of junk. So a lot of junk didn't make sense, but it helped just to put it in the interior. But also I added some of these stuff like leaking. I was going to do more of these, but didn't have time. So this stuff. So let's just add something like that, some deterioration, how you can add things. And we'll try to make it so that it'll stick on the building. So let's just grab this, but I'll show you if you go to the site, for instance, textures.com, there's a lot of, and you can make an account here. It's free, and you'll get a few credits that you can use like per day, or you can pay a little bit and you'll have access to everything. But there are some great ones here that come with an alpha. So if you just apply it, it'll be transparent where you want it to be transparent. So you see stains, leaking. These are nice mossy things, rust. But sometimes you can also look for things like rust if you like the pattern. It doesn't necessarily have to be rust. You could change the saturation, you can change the color, you can do whatever you want. If you like the pattern, it could be any type of leakage. Yep. So let me just grab the one I had. So this one. So where's Photoshop? There's Photoshop. Let me open the file. Frame 76. This is the frame. Oh, and so to move around the canvas, whoops, this is docked in here, but to move around, if I hold spacebar, I can move around the canvas. Now I can't because I have to press F. So pressing F, you can toggle between different modes. So if you press F again, I'll be in this mode. Press F again, now I'm back to this. I can't move it. So I like hitting F once, and now I can move the canvas. And these kind of ruler things you can have, they're called extras. So you can show or hide them. And again, I'm on this limited. Gonna close these and have my layers there. Okay, so that's the frame. So this is the beginning of my compositions. I might as well just save this. So this is going to be, let's just call this matte painting. Has all the layers and everything. Okay. So then, if I want to use this one, I can just click and drag it into Photoshop, into that document. So then I'm just going to repeat some things from last time. So it'll drop it in initially like a smart object, so I can scale it a little bit and just decide on the scale. But if I hit enter, see that's still a smart object. So I can still actually scale it and make my decision about the scale without it locking to that resolution. But obviously if you go over the initial resolution, you don't want to do that, but you can, you know, it's smart to keep it in this. It's smart to keep it in the smart object as when you're doing this. But okay, anyway, so let's just add that, and then now we have to rasterize it. So that's actually just turning that smart object now and just baking that into the pixels. So we can head here, rasterize layer. So I kind of like also, if I drag this into a new folder, and I can call this folder like whatever, like originals or something. Now I have a folder quickly, and it's right there if I need that element again. So I'm just going to drag this and copy it, and I'm going to drag it down here to take it out of that group. So there I just have a original folder if I need to go back to it. I'm going to right click and rasterize the layer. So now if I scale it up, I don't want to do that because now it's locked to those pixels, right? So now it's going to be very pixelated when I scale it up. So then, this is the initial thing, but then you could play around with the blending modes like we mentioned last time. So you have multiply and these regarding like dark and color are kind of similar, but you see what that does? It multiplies the underlying image. So don't get carried away with the technical things. It's just like these make things darker. If you have this, it will darken the image. But like something like overlay, you can try that. See, that's a very different effect, but it kind of blends more with the underlying color. So you just have to start playing around with this. But so like multiply, and then if you had the opposite effect, it would be like screen. But then probably need to, yeah. So that could be more like a weathering. It looks more like it's kind of the paint has been weathered away or something. That could also be interesting. Maybe if the building hadn't been painted for many years, the paint would have faded, maybe from sunlight or wind or different kind of deterioration, different types of weathering. So that's more of you're applying your again like your storytelling. What's the story of this building? What kind of weather has it been exposed to? Part of this is making something ordinary and you're bringing it into your imaginary world. But for this, let's just make something simple. So we'll add like a little bit of a dirt kind of thing. So, yeah. So let's just do what I did. I just placed it there. See if we can. So now I'm just scaling, and then you have. I obviously don't want to do this because I want this is due to gravity, so it needs to be pulling straight down. But then, whoops, maybe I should. Can I lock this layer again? Here. Where do I lock it? Here. So if I lock the layer, I don't accidentally move it around. You can press right there. Oh, so again, this thing in the move tool, this is set to this annoying button, which will automatically select anything you're clicking. So that what was happening to the background when I was clicking, it was moving the background around. So that needs to be off. Okay, and then you had these different things like transform, warp, skew, perspective. Maybe if you try skewing it, I can skew this down, something like that. And you can play around with this. Again, just roughly thinking about the perspective. So, just do that. And then instead of starting to erase, so I can hit the E, that's the eraser tool, and I can, well, I know I'm not going to need this, so I can erase that. But then instead of starting to erase here, I can also make a layer mask, which we also did last time. So it's clicking right here. It gives you a mask, which initially is all white. It just means everything is there. And then these are my two colors. I have white and black. So I can set, if you want to toggle between the primary and the secondary color, you can press X. So if I start coloring in the mask, so I need to click on the mask, select the mask, and then start coloring, it will do nothing. Oh yeah, press B for brush, and then B on the mask. Paint with black. So I can remove. But the great thing now is if I just press X to go back to white, I can add it back. So I can work more like look dubbing it. Just it's easier to do. So also if I have maybe a, so again the number keys, I can set the opacity on the brush. So if I want to be more subtle with it. So I would build this up in layers, so there would be like one, probably more, this would be just the initial layer. And then probably you'd need more like overall dirt for the whole building to sort of match this feeling. This would be the most aggressive kind of layer. And then obviously it wouldn't be this clean up here. So it would take a lot of work. But what I'm going to show you, granted, the tracking that we're going to be doing is very simple. So I'm just going to do a simple like planar tracking. So the kind of limitation with it is that it sort of needs to be stuck on roughly in the area that we're tracking. If you want to spend more time doing tracking, you can start looking into like planar solving, camera solving, like getting actual camera movement. Anyway, but so you see, that's kind of interesting. And I can make like the overall layer less opaque, something like that. Okay. And it could be fun to try to just really exaggerate and have some overgrown, nature has taken this building back, and that kind of cool setting. So it would be like overgrown up here, just really attacked by a lot of different vegetation and different types of deterioration of the surfaces. But you get the idea. This would take a lot of time. You paint, you apply time. But anyways, so you want to keep things very structured. Not necessarily when you're working, but you have to, for the most part, really try to keep things in layers. I'm not going to obviously I'm not going to merge this down to the footage. This is just a layer. And this is going to be helpful for me because eventually when I'm in After Effects, I'm just going to be exporting this as a layer. So let's just do that. So let me save this. Oh, and also with this stuff, it's kind of nice if you get into the habit of saving iteratively. So this would be, well, this is kind of matte painting 01. So just like underscore 01. And then every now and then you do an iteration. So that's typically something you always do just to avoid, like sometimes the files can get corrupt, so you can't open the file. And that just happens. Computers are crazy, so you can't open it. So you don't want to have everything in just one file. So you want to have backups also of your work, obviously, but also iterations. So you can go back in time. So if you've been working, maybe you've been working a day and it's kind of taken a direction that you didn't like. That really happens a lot to me because I can feel really great about something and I come back the next day and I kind of no. What was I thinking? Kind of no, it's not the right direction. Then going back in time is really great. I can go back a day. Anyways, just get into the habit of iterating your work. So 2 or 3 or 4 or 5. So that's the whole matte painting composition, the Photoshop composition. But I'm just going to save out just this frame. So if I save this as, well, I can just call this whatever. I don't have to really call it frame 76. That was just for me to remember it. This is going to be just the painting. So this would be maybe like mid. Like I said, so the way this works, you have to just try this, right? Try the tracking. See, you can stick things on the footage. But this is going to be in the middle of the building. Yeah, I'm going to call it building. It's just one building, so building, and it's sort of in the middle of the building. And this would be just as a copy. So if I just go here and I save as, and you save as the Photoshop document as a copy, it's not going to include all the layers in this Photoshop document. So it's just going to save it as a copy, and the background is just invisible. So save, and then OK. And then I can go to After Effects and double click. If you just double click right there to import, and we have building, middle, and footage. I guess it's OK. Yeah, it'll be all right. Let's just try it. There it is. And I can drag it down, and there it is. Oh, so I can just scroll to zoom here, or here you can press. And then the same thing, I can hold spacebar and move around the canvas. And I guess did I set it to some, I set it to multiply, I guess, in Photoshop. Yeah, so you see the blending mode on this layer, like it's a little darker here because it's set to multiply. If I set it to normal, that's just the normal blending mode. So maybe it's slightly less convincing, I don't know. So multiply. So then I also have blending modes in After Effects. So I can right click, so we have like blending mode and set it to multiply. So it might be like slightly different sometimes, the various blending modes. You might not see like 100% correlation between what it looks like in Photoshop and After Effects. So it might be a little bit tweaking you have to do, but for the most part, make it look pretty similar. So anyway, so that's it. And then so there it is. Same thing, just multiply it on top. And we're on the correct frame. So obviously if I change the frame, now it's going to look weird. If I go here, it's going to be off. But then I can click here, and I know the frame, and that's why I wrote it down. So this is frame 76, which initially was just a random frame number I selected for my matte paint. So, you know, it's a little technique you can use if you know that this is the footage you're using. You know, you don't need it to be of a higher quality than this. It's 4K already, and this is your, you know, your final film anyways. If you wanted to, you could obviously bring like a still camera or even take like a camera with your iPhone and have a higher resolution of your matte paint. What's really unnecessary to do is to move around a lot and take photos. You walk like 50 meters that way and you take photos and 50 meters that way, because then you're changing perspectives. So you're getting all the parallax. So I'm having this building from all these different angles, but I don't really need it because the camera is locked. I have no parallax. Okay. So then how do we track this thing? This is the footage. So to track it we're going to track it in something called Mocha. So there's different ways of tracking. Like I said, I'm not a compositor. I just like half-assed know my way around this thing. But this is just to show you. This is very simple. You try it. But there's different trackers. So there's some trackers in After Effects. But then you can Mocha is kind of nice. Track in Mocha. So this is a separate software. But it's sort of optimized for. Oh, is this going to work? Let's see. No. Start. Okay, so I have to set a project. So I'm going to try to save it to the same directory. Oh, needs the path. Okay. And then didn't I just give it the clip though? Yeah, maybe. Don't save. Yeah, I just fed it this clip, so it should work. Because this, I'm just selecting the clip, and then I'm going track this in Mocha. So it should open it, and I do want to try to change the directory though. Well, I guess we have to spoon feed it the track then. Okay. Yeah, that kind of sucks because it should send it right away. I don't know why it's not doing it. It's probably like a perfectly good reason why it's not doing it, but I don't know why. Okay, I'm just gonna import clip, so there's no clip there. But the point is, I don't have the final clip because the final clip is actually here. So it should use the in and out point of my comp. And that's what it's not doing. So I could export the footage and then import it. And now I have 3 mochas. That's nice. Okay, let me just do that and I'll spoon feed it. So I'll just export the footage first at 4K. So it's going to take a little bit of time. So let's take like 10 minutes and I'll export the footage and I'll import it in Mocha. All right, so we had some technical issues. And the problem was that they've actually made the new version of After Effects and the new version of Mocha less compatible with various formats. So I don't know. There might be like a good reason for it, or it might be a bad reason for it. I'm not sure. It seems to me kind of strange. But anyway, so what you probably also need to do then, so this would be important for you in order to be able to track your footage. And this is actually very relevant. So it's actually kind of nice that it happened because this is just a .mov file. It's a QuickTime file, so it could be any sort of codec on there. I don't know which. So whatever my iPhone gave me. But in order for Mocha, it didn't recognize the codec. So this is like a common problem when you go throughout different softwares. You know, some softwares are more compatible than others. So what I ended up doing is export an image sequence. So this is actually every single frame of the video exported as TIFF files, which is pretty common to do. So because your video is nothing more than, of course, a whole bunch of photos, a whole bunch of still frames. So we have 251 still photos, and I put them in a folder, in a folder, in a folder, in a folder. So how you do that? So basically, I just deselected this. So I just have my footage. So this is the in and out points. And then I go up here, we go to add to render queue. So remember, that's how you get stuff out of here. And this is the important slider. So this is the in point, and this is the out point. And if I go here and I hold shift, remember this is 251 frames, and I had 251 TIFF files in here. Hopefully, let's see. 251. So then it's also important to know, again, what frame rate your footage was shot at. That's how many frames per second. And I know that it's 24. So then I can just, okay, so do that, set the out in and out point, add to render queue. So in your case, you really need to make sure you just make a note of all the data of your footage. So you should know, ideally you'd know the codec, you'd know the format, you'd know the frame rate. So these are old renders, so I can just click them in backspace and they're gone. So here, click here, best settings. All right, this is probably okay. Just use the comp's frame rate, 24. Okay. It doesn't really, this is just going to be still images now anyways. So then the frame rate doesn't really matter here. But and then we go to here. So these are different settings. So you can do QuickTime, AVI, or just a TIFF sequence. So TIFF is like a lossless image format, like much like the Targa. So TIFFs and Targas are used a lot for lossless purposes. So TIFF, it's not going to add a compression on there. So it's not like a JPEG or a PNG where you actually have, you wouldn't notice it, but you actually have quality loss. You might notice it when you start saving, if you open a JPEG and you save another JPEG and you save another JPEG, you get sort of that generational loss. But anyways, so TIFF sequence, and this should be fine. So then okay, and then output 2, and it will actually save it in a subfolder for you, and it will just put all those images in that folder. And this is just the naming convention. This tells After Effects to replace these numbers with whatever frame numbers there. So this should be fine. If you need to do this, these are the steps to do it. You hit save, and you just get a whole bunch of image files. Just make sure you know where you're storing them. You're working a bit structured. So all I care about as far as structure here is that so far I'm just making sure everything I'm using is in the same folder, basically. That's the most basic thing. I make this project folder. So whatever sort of resources I do, you can make your own organization, but at the very least, everything is in there. So if I find a reference image or something, I like just throwing it in here. So these are all my different files associated with this project. So this is my image sequence. Well, I put it in a folder. There's all the footage. And then we go to Mocha. So yeah, so I was able to track it. So I'll go over the steps. This is pretty simple, really. And then you export the tracking data back to After Effects. And it seemed to stick on there. So the limitation with this is, like I said, you probably want to make sure that you're tracking in the region where you're sort of placing your elements. So granted, it's not like I said, it's not like a perfect track, but it's pretty simple. So you can do successful comps like this with probably a whole lot of trial and error. But what you need to realize is make life easier for yourself. Try to organize it so that you're tracking more or less the region in which your matte paint will be placed. So if I'm placing something on the ground, if I want like destroyed asphalt, that would be cool. I would track this plane. So Mocha can actually track. It uses a planar tracker, but it can also track perspective. So what you do is it's different from like in After Effects. You also have some other types of trackers, which are like point-based trackers, and that's looking for like really high contrast points, and then it just tracks the points. But this actually analyzes this whole plane, and it looks at the data within the plane. So you just define this plane, and you set it up so that it matches the vanishing point, it matches the geometry and the perspective. And then it looks at the plane, and it'll be able to track the perspective as it changes. So it's pretty sophisticated, really, because if you add more of these, you can also get a camera solver. So you can use this software to make your 3D camera if you want more sophisticated comps. For this, we don't need it, really. We can get away with this. So let me show you how to do it. So maybe let's save this project. Yes. So I just, to choose the image sequence, you just go to the, obviously the folder of the image sequence, select the first frame, and then this will say TIFF files. And that will recognize that when you select the first frame, it'll recognize that this is an image sequence. So it's frame 0 to 251. So this is very important. You set the correct frame rate. If you don't set the correct frame rate, so it's not corresponding to your composition, your track is obviously not going to match. So you need to be aware of what's your frame rate. I know it's 24. Good. Okay. All right, no. So we'll make a new one. And there it goes. So again, we have a timeline here. We can scrub on the timeline. We can play. We can do different things. But let's just start creating. So these are different like spline tools to make planes. So I'm going to define this plane. So I'm just selecting this X spline tool. It's like a pen spline tool. And then I can just go click. And I'm just looking at the perspective. I'm drawing in this more or less there, kind of like that. And you can leave more or less within that region. And if it has more data, it's better. But like again, you probably want to localize it a little bit so that it sort of sticks to more or less where your matte paint will be. So there. So you click, and then you right-click to finish the mask. And then we have some other tools here. So we have this one is Show Planar Surface. And that will also show this other little icon, and then you can drag this around. And this is also just to help define this plane. So I'm just defining the plane. And when I enable this one, this is the grid. So when I enable it, you will see a grid, and it should be corresponding to, like we're talking about the vanishing points. If you follow the lines of the building, you see that, yeah, it matches pretty good. So you tweak this around the best you can. If I move this inner thing here, it will update. Okay, so there we go, and that's it. And so now this is defined, and you can also make more layers and blah blah blah. But basically, to keep things simple, just think, where is my stuff placed? I will do a track for that specific element, and then I hit this button, track forwards, and it's at frame 0, so it's going to start tracking forwards. And then you go away. It's going to start tracking. So now it's tracking. It's just analyzing the footage. Yeah. This is 4K footage, so it would be probably, this isn't too, yeah, this is what you could expect, I think. Yeah. So I don't think the TIFF files is actually slowing it down too much. So it might be that, they figured out that, well, we prefer image files because it is preferable. And that could be the reason why they're not supporting all these different codecs. But to me, it's like, you need a plugin. And then you can do it. Yeah, but I think there was native support for it in previous versions. Yeah. Pretty sure, but okay. But anyways, so we can get it done, and then it analyzes all the frames. Then you leave it. At some point, it'll finish. So depending on what you're tracking, sometimes this will obviously go outside the frame. So and then it won't track anymore. But then you have the data up until the point, you might have to hand animate the rest of the layer if it exits the frame. But if what you're tracking is exiting the frame, you're not seeing it. So chances are whatever it is that you're placing there is no longer visible, right? So, all right, so let me just stop this. So a quick way to just get this out of here. Oh, and what I forgot to do. So what I would also do, you can hold Alt, then you can use left mouse button. If you hold Alt and left mouse button, you can just drag this up like a volume button. and slide this up and set this to like 90 or higher, or just a high amount, it will sample more of the pixels, so be more accurate. I would do that. So, and then also you can enable perspective. I would do that. And then just track it. And then export tracking data. And then there's different options here. So what I used was just the bottom one. It's just position, scale, and rotation. The corner pin is interesting if you have, well, the corner pin in this case would work also, but it's more like if you have a monitor or something and you really want to, it's just a different option. You can try it. But this one will work quite nicely. This uses an effect in After Effects called corner pin. So it's a different way of doing it. But this one works fine. If I just hit copy to clipboard, if I hit that, I can actually just go back to After Effects. And what I do is I make I just make a new solid. Just because a new solid is just like a color, just a blank color, and it will fill the frame precisely, obviously. Especially if you're using the corner pin option, that's important. This becomes important. But I'm not using the corner pin function for this. I'm just tracking this in rotation, scale, and transform values. But just make a solid, then go to frame 0, and then if I hit Control V, it will just copy and paste the frames onto this solid. And then it's going to look more or less like this. And then you're just going to have the solid, and it's just moving around everywhere. And it looks really weird, and you don't know why I did that. But now we have the data. So if we go down here, you see under transform, we have all these keyframes. These are all keyframes that keeps changing the position, scale, and rotation for this layer. Okay, so then what I need to do now is tell this layer to follow this layer. This is my matte paint, right? That's my dirt. And it's as simple as parenting it. So I just select here, it says parent, and I can select which layer it should follow, and it will be a child of this one. And then I just make this invisible. It's just like a dummy thing to have there to be able to follow. But what I also do though is I go to the frame, right? The correct frame, which in this case would be frame 76, which was my initial matte paint frame. And that's where I need to have this aligned. So I would be on that frame when I press parent. If not, your matte paint would snap out of position. So you just need to go to, if you're making a frame, that's where you're lining your matte paint up. You need to be on that frame when you click parent. So when you do that, this will just simply follow all the values of that solid. So she's moving around. One thing you can also initiate is this one, this motion blur. So it will just try to simulate some motion, but you might have to go in there and also tweak it like manually and add some blur. There's different blur options. We talk about that later. But motion blur, you can enable it here and it will render motion blur. You know what motion blur is? Nope. So motion blur, if you wave your hand in front of your eyes, that's motion blur. You can't see it very crisp. It's like it blurs out. That's what happens with a camera, depending on the shutter speed, right, of your camera. So if you're shooting something like a soccer game or a sports event, cameras will have really, really, really good lenses, so they have a lot of light and a high shutter speed. So they can capture really fine movements. If you have a lower shutter speed, so you'd have some photography class eventually. Lower shutter speed, you have more motion blur. So these are things you also have to think about. Like, obviously, I'm not thinking about it on my iPhone, but if you're on a set and you have like a director of photography and you're figuring out the VFX, these things become very important. Like, what's your shutter speed? If he's running across the camera like this, and the shutter speed is lower, his motion blur is going to be greater. Right? He's going to appear to be more blurred out. So this matters, like in terms also for like rotoscoping. If we had to separate him from the background, maybe we want less motion blur, but maybe it's like an artistic choice. No, you want more motion blur. But could we add the motion blur after? Maybe that's easier. You know, different thing. But anyways, motion blur is very important. So to match the motion blur in the footage, because there will be some motion blur a little bit when the camera moves. In this case, maybe not too much, but there will be some. So this will just try to, it's probably a pretty simple algorithm, but it will try to make motion blur when the frame moves. Anyways, so that's the basic of how to track. Questions? Yes? Yeah, I don't know the details, but yeah, it will render it. So if you try to render it, and then it should add motion blur to that layer. But what I'm saying is you probably have to. What you would do is look at it. So here you have effects control. So here we can add effects. So to like the final, well, this is the layer. So here would probably add, you can do some blur. So we could do like a directional blur. Okay, CC. Right, yeah, you can search over here, right? CC, force motion blur. Force. Oh, there it is. Then I can drag that on there, right? Yeah, so this is a nice panel. So you can, like, if you know of what you're looking for, you can search for it like that and just drag it on the thing. Oh, cool. Hmm. Yeah, so this might be a more sophisticated way of going about things. Cool. Yeah, so this is probably preferable. And then you'd have to render it and look at it and see what happens. All right, nice. So CC force motion blur. So there's a lot of stuff in here. You know, there's blur, different blurs, a lot of different effects. Cool. So what else? Good. Other questions? Tips? Tricks? You just have to try this. You know, okay, so I don't really know. That's it. So I'm not going to show more tracking because you just have. It's the same process. So if obviously if I'm tracking somewhere, like I said, at the ground, we'd match the plane with the ground, and this grid would be on the ground. And you use these tools. So you use this one, and you have the grid tool finally to see your alignment. But I would start just drawing with the pen tool, just drawing the splines, and then this tool to make the plane, and then this finally just to see if your alignment is correct. And then you hit track. So you can whichever frame you're at, you can start tracking forwards, or you can start tracking backwards. So tracking backwards could be, let's say if you have an object that enters the frame, right? So if it's out of frame and then it enters the frame, you probably need to track backwards because you need to track it when it's in frame and it's leaving the frame, right? And vice versa. If something's in the frame and it's leaving the frame, you can track forwards because then you're tracking it and it's leaving the frame. But if it's entering the frame, you have to track backwards so that, right? Make sense? Yeah. Anyways, let's track backwards, track forwards. But essentially, you can just keep tracking. You know, you can pause it and you can keep tracking later. And once this fills up, you have all the data. Export tracking data, copy to clipboard, select the right option. I select the bottom one, and then just paste it in. And see what you get. So sometimes you might have to try a couple of times. So this seemed pretty successful. It might also be helpful, like if you see that it's not perfect, maybe try to sample a larger area. Sometimes that helps, so you have more, actually a little more data in there. But I think we're being nice with Mocha because it's getting like a TIFF sequence, it's 4K, it's kind of nicely lit. So it's not a very, very challenging scenario, I think. But sometimes you'd have much more challenging things. So things you have to keep things simple. So when you're out location scouting and you're thinking about how to do this and how to shoot it, think about things like trees, uh, dynamic objects. Like if you have a lot of cars, try to avoid it. If you want, you can add them, but there would be a lot of rotoscoping. So if there were a huge uh, courtyard tree here, this would be much trickier to do, especially placing stuff behind that tree. Much more challenging scenario. So when you're out and you're on location and you're looking around and you're thinking about how to solve this, you should think about all these things. How can we just make things simple but still make it look interesting? And then another thing is, I think like when you make like something like this, like a building destruction element, this was done in, again, like, in an afternoon, but it's like if you spend time on this, you can really make a convincing destruction scene or whatever it is that you're doing. There's no CG involved. This wasn't like simulated destruction and then if you needed it to actually see it blow up, what we could do is you would have the original footage. Let's see if I can open that comp. That was done in 2015, so I don't know if it'll, let's see. So that's on this one. Comp version 3. Okay, so it's going to try to convert it. Did it make it? Yeah, it seemed to make it. So, what was I going to show? Okay, so here we can, so see, I just turned that off. That's the destruction. Yeah. I actually track a separate one for the destruction over there. Track this portion. If you were to do like a real destruction, if you wanted to see this building being hit by a meteor and whatever, we could do a simple, well, it's not simple, but it would be more complex. We could do like a 3D model, but a very simple model, and then project this exact texture onto the model. So you're not like shading it, you're not texturing it actually. You're just projecting the footage or the frame onto the model. So it just looks like the film. And then you can like simulate destruction and have the building fall down. And what the destruction would reveal is the matte painting. Right? So that's sort of a trick that's often done. So you can mix and match. But now you're talking a much more complicated shot. You have a CG element. So, but my point here is you can do so much without CG. CG is like, well, people who started CG now, it's like you spend weeks and months, and especially when you're learning it, and then you're able to make something that still looks like crap. And then and it will look like crap until you start talking about like surface response, like how does light actually reflect off of surfaces? Is it a rough reflection or a more specular reflection? Is it a subsurface surface, or is it more of a, there's all these things that you have to take into consideration. So CG production is much more complex. This is not. But in VFX, when you're making these decisions, that's like night and day in terms of the time spent and the resources you have. So if you say, well, let's lock the camera, we don't actually need to go around and look inside here. You might think, oh yeah, we're going to do this great, amazing shot where you have the camera go around, we see inside the destruction. Now you're talking a much, much more expensive shot. Can you sell the same idea, the same story, being from this angle? Because we care about this guy. What's he up to? Yeah, he's in this destroyed environment, but we don't have to actually go in there. Now you just shaved off the budget like 10-fold, 100-fold, because you lock the camera. There's no parallax. You can just paint it and track it. Boom. You don't even need a camera solver. You can do this very simple track that we did. And then you rather spend that energy and resources on something that would require CG if anything, but it could be like I said, like a destruction element or whatever. If you're doing a sci-fi ship comes down or something that's moving about in the scene, and you mix elements. But that's why I always ask, like, why are you doing stuff in CG? And there should be like an answer for it. If you're doing it in CG, there's a reason for it. Then you need parallax. If you're moving around it, you probably need CG of some sort. But you should all be aware of this, like both all of you who want to be like filmmakers and you want to have VFX in your projects, or your VFX people who want to work with VFX. Because building like a competence and a confidence, like what can you pull off? That's what this is all about. So that's why I want you to take this into your project and try to make something out of it. Make a little narrative. See how far can you actually push it with these simple techniques. So yeah, so I made a separate track for this. You can see that it's just like placed in there. So this might be a little confusing, but once you get started with this, you start with the matte paint, and then Steven is also going to come in here. I think he's going to do more like basic Photoshop and even more like structured thing, if some of you are uncomfortable. And then Christian will also do more After Effects stuff. So, but this is a composition that's within the composition. So I think I will talk about this now. Yes, I should. So you see, this makes no sense, right? It's like, but that's the element that's actually being placed on top of the footage. And this is a composition in itself. So here you see I've been working with, here's like a blue haze layer. It's the same thing as we were doing in the field, and I was adding this strange little motor. But there's a blue haze. So these are the smoke elements, actually, that we got from Action Essentials. And they look pretty crude, so when you put them in here, it did not look good. First of all, the speed was wrong. So typically, when you shoot like miniatures, these smoke elements are much, much smaller than the actual smoke needed to be, because this is billowing huge smoke out of the building. So the main thing is that it needs to be slowed down. So also if you're shooting miniatures, so if like this bottle were a building and it's tipping over, you can shoot it. I could shoot this, I could do this, and I could shoot that. But that'll look silly if I put that on the film. But if you shoot with a higher frame rate, so you can even do that with your phone. Now we're talking frame rates, but we can talk more about that. But like if I shoot with a higher frame rate and I play it back at 24 frames a second, then I could see this huge motion. It looks more like a huge object. So there's some math involved. Like you can figure out like the exact frame rate you need to shoot depending on the ratio of your miniature. But essentially, what you think, you need more frames. So for the smoke here, we didn't have, like what I would have liked if these smoke elements should have been shot at a higher frame rate. So if I had a lot of frames to work with, so then I could just choose, like if it were shot like at 300 frames per second. It's not. So, but so to this, there were, for instance, added like a couple of things. There's yeah, so if you right click, you can go to time. So this was added like a simple time stretch. It's just so just enter. So this is like slowed down by half. So I'm stretching it by a factor of 1, like 200 instead of 100. So that's half the speed. So now we have half the speed of the smoke, which helped. But then you get like sort of a flickering, because the frame rate, you're just stretching the frames, so you get a little flicker. So you use like a interlace flicker. It seems to take care of the flickering a little bit, and some tinting. So these are just creative techniques you can try. Play around with the Action Essentials, which are on the server. I'll post a link if you want to try it, to add like smoke, debris, flames, and stuff like that. Flames are a little more tricky because that would influence the lighting. So I didn't add that. And then that's also just a painted bit of the sky, because we needed something behind the building when the building is gone. And that's also just there. So this is all painted in Photoshop. So let me open this in Photoshop. I'll open the comp. So I'm going to go here. Not hugely organized, but at least it's named. Comp 2, see that? Yeah, so this looks right. So this is the element that was exported, and it was just exported like this. That's it. And that's just a flat. Like, you can export this whole composition to After Effects and play around with the layers in After Effects. So with motion graphics and with Christian, I think you're going to be doing a lot of that. There's lots of ways of doing this. For this, I prefer having this flat and just I'm working the matte. It's like it's a matte painting. This is what I need. This is what's going to be imposed over the footage. So when I put the footage underneath, it all makes sense. Not here. So what's lacking here? Does someone tell me why? What's kind of lacking here? Yeah. Blur. What else? Haze. Yeah, the smoke is missing. But yeah, like so the blur, blue haze. Was that blending? Yeah, I don't know. Did my best, but it's it's missing also the contrast levels. So that's the other huge thing we're talking about. Like match the contrast levels. So you look at the darkest areas over here, and you sample their values. So you see, and you look at the darkest values here and sample their values. They're much darker. So I would match the contrast levels to more or less match this. And of course, it's very blurry. And there's also a match grain feature in After Effects. But I chose to do all of this in After Effects. So I know that it's missing, but it's like, yeah, okay, but we could probably solve that in After Effects. So this is this is the main work. I mean, this is the work. That's the work. The painting is really the work. So this is all about starting to paint. And this is like you have the debris there just stuck in there. That was the debris that I found. I'm not showing you this as like a perfect sample of a matte paint, but just to give you an idea, you can just do simple things. So like that one. So sometimes, when we're doing CG and VFX, this is kind of a sad story behind this picture, but sometimes we do like all kinds of strange diseases, a lot of strange reference search. So if you have to get used to, there's a lot of strange reference search going on, useful for skin textures and things. Anyway, so it just had a lot of this rubble, which I was interested in. And see, I just stuck it in there. And I didn't do a lot to it, so that's what you're seeing down there. All this is just that image. Let's see if I like keeping the originals around. Yeah, so that's the original. So you can sort of see, well, it's not positioned, but it's like positioning that around. So I'm using like this element right here. It's just figuring out, and the perspective was kind of matching, which helped. And then same up here, just added rubble. And that's like some interior. I don't know what that is. Yeah, it's just that interior. Look at that. Didn't do much to it. And then added like this roof element. Let's see, wall. Oh yeah, and there's also, well, I have them right here then, originals, I guess. So yeah, this one. So that was, spent some time isolating, so I got a nice, well, it's not nice. I should have spent more time. But kind of a decent alpha. So original was this one. So you do a lot of reference search. So you spend some time like finding good references is really key. A lot of Google image search, a lot of like those texture sites have a lot of interesting. Like if you search for rubble on textures.com, you have a lot of interesting things. So this is also nice, and I kind of saw that it would be pretty simple to isolate this and get a nice alpha. So yeah. what else? So there's that element, just quickly. And I don't think I ever used, yeah, I used, so okay, so this is actually a nice example because here I was looking for something that would be, this is not used as moss, or like, I'm not using the coloration of this at all. I just like the pattern. And this is just multiplied down, so it would be look like, it would be more like an effect of the smoke or something. So if I set this to, where is it? If I set this to multiply, and then I can desaturate it, so Control-Shift-U. All right, I gotta rasterize that first. So oftentimes, so now that, you know, has a very different feel, but I like the pattern. So sometimes you can find like rust or any pattern that you like, change the coloration, even don't use the coloration, you can do whatever you want. Multiply down or screen it on top. Now it's more like, again, it's more like the paint has chipped away or something. So blending modes, using references, this is fun. You know, have fun with it. Okay, so then let me, yeah, so that was that, and then I don't need that one. It's just a merged copy. I don't know what's doing that sound. Yeah, so I guess I really should have, yeah, so I could have exported this as one layer to multiply it again in After Effects and then this layer. But so let me just show you. So this would be sort of the layer I would export. So save this as, and this would be, you know, building left. Oh, so yeah, so I call it wall left all elements. This is wall left multiply. So that would be the, if I wanted to multiply it separately again in After Effects, just like I do here, I have like a multiply layer with a dirt on top. So that some work went into placing the dirt, and I guess yeah, some of these are multiply, but I also, yeah, this is set to overlay. So if I set it to multiply, you see it retains less of the coloration underneath, but I wanted this to look more like dirt. So it retains more of the coloration. So you just play around with the blending modes. So anyways, and then you export that frame with nothing else. So the background is just invisible. I save as, and I don't save layers. I just save as a copy, name it something useful. And then in the comp, I do the work, more work. So you can see that this is the comp. I can double click it, and let's see. Right. So you can look at these comps kind of like groups in Photoshop. I think we're getting a little. it might be too much, but let me just mention this, and you have to get started in trying stuff. But here I can have stuff in a composition. This is a composition. This is just the composition for the wall. Wall left all. It has all the elements for the wall. And then when I double click this icon, this is the composition icon, it will open in the timeline. This is what I'm seeing. I don't have the background there even. This is invisible. If I click here, I believe, I'll see the same transparency grid as in Photoshop. Okay. But it's kind of difficult to work in this layer because I kind of need to see it at the same time. So what I do, right click, new viewer. Then I can have two viewers, and then in this one I guess I can put, this would be the comp. So what you're seeing obviously, two separate compositions. It's just that this composition exists within this composition. So if we go back here, this is the footage. This is the, well, I could have named it main comp or something. This is the main composition. Okay? It's this one. Okay, so there's all my elements. As you're looking at here, this is the final comp. Oh, and I added some cheesy cinematic letterbox thing, or opposite. Yeah. Okay, adjustment layer, just tiny bit of curves adjustment. But the point here is, this is where you have to probably repeat this and make sense of this later. Okay, but you have to you have to try this because this is very, very powerful. So this is the composition with everything. I'm dragging that composition just within here, and it's just like a layer. So when I turn it off, it's just turning on and off this. But then I can also click here and go to the effects controls. And I can add effects to this composition as a whole. So I can add curves, which I did here for the contrast adjustment. You see that makes a big difference? This is just matching, like we're saying, the dark contrast levels and a blur. And it's just added one time simply on top of this composition, which exists within the main composition. But it was easier for me to add stuff like here I have a blue layer that's just sort of tinting everything. Yeah, this is too, it's too much. But okay. Yep. I'm not going to cover the track matte thing. You want to hear it? Does anyone want to hear it? No. Yes? Okay. So for those interested, let's see, where's the track matte? So here. Okay, so yes, this is my original layer. Right. So this is my original layer. Right? That's the Photoshop layer. And then this was just a part of my look dubbing. I said, well, I need a blue haze on top of there, like that. This is also just the final layer, but I need a blue haze on top of there. That's all, okay. But I can't have it so that the haze will cover any of this area because I'm not adding more blue haze to the existing footage. I'm only adding haze to the new element, right? I don't want to haze over here because there's going to be more haze on the video. That's not going to make sense. Only on this element. So then I can add, so I can track the alpha for this layer. So the alpha is like, you know, where the transparency is. That's sort of controlled by the alpha, what alpha means. We talked about this. Yeah, we did. So, okay, so anyways, so here I do, what do? I do track. Yeah, so I just copied this to show it. Okay, so we can go layer, new, solid. Let's just make it something crazy. And then we'll try this. We'll initiate that and track matte layer 3. Yeah. So now this is getting the alpha from this layer. So that's all the track matte option. And you won't see it unless you click here. So you need to expand to see some more controls. Then you have something called track matte. So let me turn it off again. So now nothing happened. So this is the original layer. I just have that layer there. I also make a copy of this layer and I put it down there because I know this will only be used to actually get the alpha information. I'm not going to see this layer. And I go here. That's my solid. I want the same alpha. I just go here, track matte. And this layer needs to be placed underneath this one. And track matte, alpha matte, layer 3. Now we have the alpha. And then this could be a red haze. And I place this over there. And now we have a red haze. Right? Makes sense. And it's not affecting the footage. It's just because the alpha is only there. So when I go back to the main footage, now we have red haze, which doesn't match. But if you wanted, like, if we added a fire, like I said, like fire, it would affect the lighting in here. So I would definitely, you know, it would take more work. But the beauty of this is you can do this in a separate comp. This is its own little composition, and I can play around with things. So, and I added the smoke elements. Oh, and yeah, we have some time though. We can cover that. Mm. Yeah, did we talk about rotoscoping? Yeah, so yeah, let's just talk about that. So you see in the final footage, the smoke is obviously in there. Where is it? Footage. Where's the smoke? Oh, I think I messed something up here. Let me open the composition. Yep, smoke is back. So obviously, the smoke is slightly obscured by this front wall. So that was the only rotoscoping I had to do here. So rotoscoping is just like a term also back from the day when you would you can hand paint, like you have matte paintings and then you have traveling mattes. So traveling mattes are basically, I showed you the, like back in the day, the matte paintings, how you make a black and white matte. You have a black matte. So imagine if you paint frame by frame, you can paint by hand a bird, like in Hitchcock, the birds. That's how they composited the birds. So you hand paint carefully a traveling matte, hand painted, animated by hand, a black silhouette of a bird flying that matches frame by frame the actual bird flying, the footage of the bird. So that's hand painting and rotoscoping. So this is obviously very different, but it's also pretty manual labor sometimes. So which is also very convincing. Like if you have foreground elements that you're obscuring the background with, it's more convincing. So this is also, again, about building your confidence with this, because then you can plan shots and actually have people walk in front of your matte paint element and try rotoscoping. It could make it more convincing. So anyways, so let me just show you how that works. Maybe we should do a more clear example. Yeah, so let's find Christian. Where is he? Oh, there he is. So typically, like, you wouldn't necessarily have to shoot stuff on a green screen to separate people out. And as you probably saw when you're shooting the green screen, it's very tricky to get satisfactory results shooting with green screen. But you can also bring what's probably much better, I think, for you guys is to bring portable green screen on set if you wanted to have an easier job rotoscoping. If you knew that you had to replace the background where he's walking, for instance. But what could be rotoscope? Let's do the car. It's kind of a static object, very, very simple. So, anyways, so let's just add something. Let's, let me just show this in a new project. I think it's going to be a little more be easier to see. So that's the footage. Making the composition. Old lady. Let's see. All right, so now we don't have the track data. Let me just show you on the still frame. And then we could do the track data, and then you could track the object, which you probably realize. But let me show you on this. So what can we do? Let's just change something. I'll make a copy of this, Control C, Control V, and we'll just do something. So whatever, add some effect. Just change the hue. So hue saturated, we change the hue. I don't know. Let's do something else. I'm out of ideas. Let's let's add an image there, at least something. All right, let's just add this. I'm gonna add a piece of the sky, whatever. Drop it in there. So we have a JPEG. I'm just gonna drop that down there, and I don't care about this. And then, okay, so we have sky. And now there's going to be sky behind the car here. So then you start rotoscoping. So then you can just you can use the pen tool, like we did a mask using the pen tool in Mocha. This is a pen tool. So it's just you start drawing a spline curve. Now this is the basics. So I'm just drawing this. Let's just do it on backspace to delete points again. No, but I can do this. Okay, so this, I made a mask. This is a mask. Currently, it's an additive mask. If I go down here, you'll see now I have something called a mask there, and it's set to add. If I set it to subtract, it's going to subtract from this image. Just like you're cutting a hole in the image. That's it. And then you can obviously manipulate the points, and you have to make this look good. So then you can go into the mask, and you can say mask feather. So we can add some feathering to the mask. That's feathering the edge pixels so that it won't be so crisp. If I turn this up, you see this is very, well, it's pretty hard edge. So I can go a little bit of an edge feather, maybe a couple of pixels. So you see that just blur, I don't know if you see it up there, but kind of blurs it a little, makes it more convincing. Then there's this button. You can toggle on and off the actual mask. And then you can keep drawing this out, and let's see. How do I, yeah, so I'm not like, I don't do this a whole lot, actually. Let's see. I need to be able to change this point. Someone notice how I can get the handles for the Bezier curve? No, Alt. Yeah, Alt did it. Okay. So you Alt click. Thank you. Then you can you see that you alter the curve. So this is like your standard pen tool kind of a thing. So I think Thomas posted when we were doing the Photoshop, he had like this interesting online game that you could get really good at the pen tool. If you get really good at the pen tool, you can probably do this quicker. I'm not really good at the pen tool. But if you Alt click it, you'll get these handles, and then you can make the curve more like soft. And then you turn off this every once in a while to see where you're at. So you can make this pretty convincing. So that's basically rotoscoping, and then we have a mask, and that's so typically if you have a pretty complex shot and you want to roto out something, you probably add more masks. So there's one mask, and then especially if you have a traveling map, so you're making if it were to be Christian, well, let's find the, no, I haven't tracked the shot. Okay. Then if something's moving around, you probably need more masks, right? So you would add another mask and start painting that one. So you do that here. You know, for that edge, and then, I mean, this example doesn't really make sense because it's, but you get the idea. Oh, let me just get rid of that. So, start painting. And you can obviously get pretty good at this. So there, and I can set that mask also to be subtracting. So now I have two masks. And I can just like keep animating both of those masks. So if you have something traveling around, you have to do that. But in my composition, I didn't really have to do anything. It's actually a static roto job because it's tracked. So I'm not like making the mask. The mask is just stuck on this composition. This is a static composition. This is where I'm doing my masking. So we have the smoke billowing up. Let's just temporarily add a white solid so we can see it. I have to remove it afterwards, obviously. There's the smoke. And we can see here, this is the roto job that I did. Just quick and dirty, add a subtractive mask from the smoke elements. So there's a couple of subtractive masks. So if I go and do none, now you'll see the smoke is also in front and less convincing. It's no longer inside there. And if I go to the footage, see what kind of an effect that could have. Oh, and then the white solid, turn that off. So you see if I make changes to this comp, it just updates. So you see less convincing. Now the smoke is kind of in front of the building. But it's a static composition, so there's no animation of the masks. Very simple, subtractive masks on the smoke layers. And then the footage is tracked, so this is just going to be stuck on there. Yeah, so that's good. We covered a lot of ground today. That's nice. So that was your basic roto job, adding subtractive masks or additive masks. We didn't animate them, but I don't think we'll have time. But you can set keyframes to anything in here. But you can do pretty simple things. See that? What else? Yeah, so the little, like I said, so the little curves adjustment that I did was pretty crucial to make this look a little more convincing. So you see if we compare it to what I had in Photoshop, which was that. So it's far too crisp. The contrast levels are way too dark compared to this. Also, the color balance is a little off. It should be like more of a blue haze. And yeah, but all of these things you can add also in After Effects. So here, and the benefit of using After Effects for this is that well, you can add adjustment layers and things in Photoshop, but this is kind of nice because you have them in here, and they're just more like you can change them at any time. They're just right here, and they're just assigned to this composition. So under Window Effect Controls, you see I can at any time go in here and adjust the curves. So what you're looking at here, the curves, down here you have all the dark tones. So you see what I've done here, simply, I could have used levels, but I have less of a control. Well, for this, but you see what I mean here. So you can just drag and add points. So if I want to up the darkest levels, so I'm just raising this area. So I can do crazy things like that. Now it's starting to match more like old footage, like really washed out footage. I could make it look like that. So but these are the darker tones, so I have a little bit more control with a curve editor like this one. So these are my mid-tones, and these are the brightest parts. We can take those down or up. The brightest tones I'm not so concerned with. It's much more the contrast levels. So as I'm altering this, it's kind of similar to adding levels. So you have curves and you have levels adjust. Just, where is it? Color correction, levels. And then these would be my dark tones. I could raise that. You see, I have a little bit less control And this is my gamma, so I could play around with that. So I could probably get it kind of similar. But here, like I said, you just sample down here and make slight adjustments to the curve. So it's very useful. But it's a bit tricky getting used to the way, because when you add a point, this whole curve will update. So gotta be a little bit careful. And then obviously just a blur to blur it, which is just under here, blur. Yep. And then we could, what's your name? Yes. Hmm? Paul Simon. We could use Paul Simon. Okay. We could use Paul Simon's blur, CC blur filter. That's nice. Yeah. A lot of interesting features. So the CC filters and effects, pretty cool. You have a lot of interesting things in here. Maybe you want to do something more psychedelic, and you can make the whole image warp, and you can, a lot of cool things you can do. Quite simply. Not simply. Spend time with it, But technically, it's pretty simple. It's just like, you can play around with this. It's a lot of fun. So that was really it. But really, then you can see that I would really suggest try to be comfortable and just see if you can, I'm not comfortable, be brave. Just say that, yes, this looks a little off in terms of the contrast levels, the hue maybe, and the color temperature and all of that. Maybe I can try that in After Effects. And then this is everything I export from here. I think it's easier for you to match it in After Effects because you can work more iteratively. You just you make all these minute changes. It's similar to a lot of things. It's similar to sculpting or similar to writing. It's like all these little changes you keep making based on your best judgment. Your aesthetic sense or whatever, and probably train your eye. Visually be more analytical. Like what's actually missing here? Why? What could make it better? Right. So, and then remember all the things about composition. Remember all the visual depth, the atmospheric depth, color temperature. I'm repeating myself, but these are, you'll arrive at something quicker and more efficient if you train yourself to be a little more analytical about what you're doing. Like what is missing here? So it's also helpful then to communicate in the group and ask for advice. What do you guys think? What's the direction? Because it's like all these minute changes that eventually will get something start looking okay. It's going to look horrible for forever, and it really looks horrible. Like when you start this, it really looks like crap because you have all like this. It doesn't look good. It looks like a collage of images, which it is, just paste on top of each other. But just try it. I think it doesn't really. You can do this stuff. It'll be interesting to see. I think we're done. But so I'll post some info about the little assignment that I want you to do and the exact date for delivery and all that. But you should basically get together in the group. I would like you to do that today. Get together in the group, say hi to your group members, and talk about this project that I want you to do. Start talking about that. That's what I want you to do. Oh, so final questions? When will the video? As soon as it's exported, if it works. And there's no music today, so YouTube should accept it. Anything else? Okay. So good luck and have fun.